Don't start it.
I
Oh, you
already
did?
did.
Okay. I'm going to talk first then. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our presentation, Strengthening Small Business Cybersecurity, Being Prepared and Building an Effective Incident Response Plan, sponsored by the New Mexico Small Business Technology Commercialization Accelerator, TCA. We are pleased to have Andrew Buschbom from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, with us today to lead this session. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to highlight the mission of the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, NMSBDC. We are here to support small businesses across New Mexico with training and one-on-one counseling. Our mission is simple: to grow strong businesses and skilled entrepreneurs. My name is Estefanita Steffi Rawlings, and I serve as the New Mexico Small Business TCA Center Director at New Mexico Tech, where we focus on training and counseling in intellectual property, IP, and cybersecurity. Our IP services include assistance with patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Today's session will begin with Andrew's presentation, which focuses on practical, actionable steps small businesses can take to strengthen their cybersecurity posture. As a reminder, small businesses are increasingly the targets of cyber attacks, but with preparation, you can reduce risks and recover more quickly. Andrew will walk us through how to protect your businesses, recognize threats, and create an effective incident response plan to help your business remain resilient. After the presentation, we will move into a Q&A session. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A at any time. Before we begin the Q&A, we kindly ask you complete a brief survey. As part of our commitment to our stakeholders, we are required to collect feedback on our trainings, and your responses help us better understand your needs and continue improving our services. We greatly appreciate your participation. This session is being recorded, and both the recording and a PDF version of the presentation will be available after the class has closed. The recordings will be posted on the New Mexico Small Business YouTube channel, and you will receive an email with the link and the PDF file. I would like to extend a special thank you to Christopher Garcia and all his work behind the scenes, coordinating marketing material, helping set up webinars, and administering surveys across the New Mexico Small Business trainings. We truly appreciate everything he does to make sessions like this possible. Again, thank you all for being here today. We're glad to have you, and we hope this presentation provides valuable guidance for protecting your business. With that, I am honored to introduce Andrew Buschbom from CISA.
Thank you, Steffi. All right, we're going to get right into it. Thank you all for joining. Cybersecurity has become a big issue for every parts of our life, right? Technology's everywhere. It's difficult running a small business. My wife has a small business. My sister, my mom ran a small business. Their incident response plan was to call me. Not everybody can do that. So I want to help you get some things together. Hopefully you can prevent a cyber incident from occurring. That's the first thing I want to talk about. Day to day, I had 5 people contact me this morning that had been compromised, 3 of those being small businesses. And it's not often that it's a super complicated attack that happens. The best thing you can do to protect your business where you don't have to respond to an incident is use strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is having something besides just a password. Now, threat actors have started to get around multi-factor authentication. That's just text-based. So you get an email with the 6 digits or 6 numbers, right? So CISA recommends using phishing-resistant multi-factor. I can't recommend any paid products, but this is an A&D recommendation. I use a YubiKey, little hardware token. My wife uses that for her business. I just wanted to throw that out there. Really, where you can use multi-factor authentication and not just have a password, you will protect yourself immensely from just a regular password. Again, recognizing phishing attacks. When I have small businesses reach out to me, my role at CISA, I'm the Cybersecurity State Coordinator for New Mexico. I focus more on critical infrastructure, state agencies, key resources. So there's not a ton I can do one-on-one to help a small business. That's why I want to get this information out there that you're going to have to fight for yourself during an incident. So let's try not to have that happen. So the strong passwords with multi-factor authentication. Recognize phishing attempts. If you have employees, train them about what phishing would look like. There are some resources. If you go to CISA.gov, CISA.gov, there's a whole small business page with training toolkits that you can leverage to review yourself or your employees. Update your software. I've been guilty of this. I had to update my laptop this morning. That is a huge vector for threat actors to get into your business and ransomware you or steal your data. So just keep your software updated. And a lot of times when I work with smaller organizations, they do not have backups. And if they do have backups, they kept them on the same computer they use day to day, and they end up getting ransomware. So create a backup. Put it onto a little portable drive, have one at your house or with somebody else, but have it off site. If you have employees sharing a computer, limit the permissions they have on that computer. Give them a restricted account. And then if you can, use endpoint protection. I'm a big fan of Microsoft Defender. It comes with all Windows. You can pay more. Not a CISA recommendation, but that Microsoft Defender does work well if you're in that Microsoft environment. I wanted to get that out of the way. These 6 things will get you 95% of the way to just being very, very secure. So the objectives of the incident response plan, I want to talk about creating an incident response plan. Now, when I work with critical infrastructure, these end up being 20-some pages. First, that wouldn't work for my wife, my mom, my sister. No, they're not going to have a 20-page incident response plan for their business. 2 to 3 pages, you can get a lot of information into that plan. You can get it to your employees. And it just, if an incident occurs, whether it's a malicious cyber attack like ransomware, malware, or your computer fails, or just something happens, this will help you. So the objectives of this talk are to get you to think about the possible sources of incidents you'd face. What do you need to respond to those incidents, from personnel, from equipment? And then how do you evaluate your plan and test it and keep it updated? So incident management really is the process of detecting, analyzing, responding to, and improving when an incident occurs. And this, we're talking about cyber, but this could also be physical. If someone broke into your business, you can keep building on this plan. It's fairly versatile and uses a framework. So why do we need a plan, right? You don't want to have a disruption in your operations, your business. You can damage customer trust. That's a difficult thing to get back. Can lead to financial and legal consequences. I've seen individuals that had suffered a compromise and they just weren't able to recover from that. They basically went bankrupt, or it led to just the closure of the business. So again, this incident response plan provides a clear, actionable framework you can follow to detect if a cyber incident is occurring, contain it, and then recover so you can get back to running your business. So some things to think about when you start to put a plan together. Ask yourself, how would you report a cyber incident, or how would your staff report a cyber incident? Just before we started this talk, I was talking with Stephanie and Chris. I had an individual contact me last night after hours. They didn't know who to reach out. They were suffering a cyber incident at the time. I was off with my kids at a sporting event. This individual had no incident response plan, and this was larger than a small business. And they took 3 or 4 hours before I ended up responding to them. So you need to have some of this documented, right? Who can you reach out to for assistance? Do you have an IT vendor, someone you can have help you? Your insurance. Do you have cyber insurance? I highly recommend if you have insurance, you look into the cyber insurance, reach out to them, see what can they do to help. What do you need to do to make sure you're covered if something occurs? I was speaking with a small business a couple months ago. They suffered a ransomware attack. They called their cyber insurance or their insurance provider. They had cyber insurance. Now, it wasn't a great experience for them having that cyber incident, but the insurance worked with them. They had the incident response team. They were able to help this business recover. They didn't pay a ransomware. They were able to get back up and running. How are you going to communicate with your customers if something occurs? Just these are some things to keep in mind as you create your plan. Now, before you begin to create your plan, you need to have a few things in place, really a scoping statement. And I'll talk about these shortly. Roles and responsibilities, who will do what? External requirements, what do you need for assistance? And then the biggest thing, your budget, right? That's always a challenging thing, even with large corporations. Budget constraints affect incident response. So your scoping statement, this defines what you need to address in your incident response plan. It can cover your whole business or just a single unit, or what is the most critical to your business. It could change. There's so many different things you could be involved in. So you need to sit down and identify what are those critical points of your business that you need to get back operating as soon as possible that will just be devastating if it occurs to you. So defining roles, another very important thing to do. I was on an incident response team. I worked for the Federal Reserve. All I did was incident response. I knew that was my role. Sometimes when I come into organizations and businesses, it is not clearly defined. And when an incident occurs, it definitely leads to confusion. So having defined roles and responsibilities and having those individuals aware of it speeds up that response time. Make sure you don't overlook anything. And then the communication. And communication during an incident is really critical to have that both internally with your employees, your staff, and those vendors or your insurance, and just effectively use your resources. Running a small business is very hard. Limited resources. Most people don't have an IT department or an IT team. It's contracted out to an individual. So the external requirements, again, I go back to cyber insurance a lot of the times. I want to highlight, if you have cyber insurance, they're really almost the first person or organization you need to reach out unless you have some sort of legal counsel in-house. That would be my first recommendation. Do you have any regulatory requirements? Are there any certain types of data you're dealing with that you have a duty to report? So those documented are important to have and make sure you and your staff know. And then the budget. What do you need for resources, tools, that third-party support? Incident response is a difficult thing to do, and it's hard to have in-house. Most of the people I work with have a retainer or go through cyber insurance to do that. So establishing and documenting the process. This is where we're going to begin to build our plan. Now, I don't know if any of you, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that is what CISA uses and references. NIST has so many different documents. NIST SP 861R2, right? Revision 2. Doesn't sound super exciting, but this is how you build an incident response plan if you really want to get deep into it. You follow an established framework and you have standard repeatable processes. That is pretty intense. I have two sources you can get a template from to begin planning your incident response. This is from CISA, CISA.gov. You can go there. Not my favorite template. I'll just be honest. MSISAC. CISA used to fund MSISAC. This is the Multi-State Information Sharing Analysis Center. We're parting ways from MSISAC. Their website, they still have this information up, is CIS or CISecurity.org. Another good incident response template you can download and begin to fill out. And as a smaller business, I would really try to stick around that 3 pages for an incident response plan. But leverage those templates to begin. And then start to identify the roles and responsibility that people are going to need to do. How is incident response going to get completed? Are you just going to reach out to the cyber insurance and let their team take over? Do you have staff in-house that can handle it? Or do you work with an IT vendor that supports you, that you can reach out to? Everybody has to be aware of this roles and responsibilities they're assigned in the plan. Some key roles to think about: the incident lead. There needs to be one individual leading that incident and coordinating it. Often it's the owner of a small business, right? That is their small business. That's their livelihood. They're going to be that incident lead. And then reaching out to your IT vendor, your insurance, MSP, that's your managed service provider. Some people have those, some don't. Communications. You need somebody in charge of communicating internally with your staff, externally, if you have customer data that was leaked, things like that. Legal compliance. What kind of things do you need to report? We highlighted a little bit. Often cyber insurance, if you do have it, they have breach counselors. They're going to help walk you through this. But you don't want to do this when an incident occurs. So I highly recommend you start to put together that incident response plan. Reach out to your insurance provider if they offer cyber insurance. See what they do for you. Will they help you with your incident response plan? And more organizations or companies, if you work with, I know in New Mexico, we have the labs, right? Department of Energy, Department of Defense. They're starting to require you have an incident response plan. You are CMMC certified at a level 1, and part of that is having an incident response plan. So it's becoming more and more prevalent that you need to have this done. If there are certain contracts you want to get. Another key role, like employees, how do they report? You want that documented in there. And then establish a declaration process. Who can say, hey, we're having a cyber incident? Can an employee do that, or is it only the owner? You want to identify and document those who have the authority to declare that a cyber incident is occurring. You need an incident response team. I was on a dedicated team in my past. That's all I did, day in and day out, was incident response. I've been in other organizations where the incident response team was made up of 3 or 4 people that had different roles day to day. But if something occurred, they were moved over to this incident response team, or this could be a vendor or your cyber insurance. Something to think about. Escalating incidents. Again, who needs to know? How does it get up to the owner? How do you find out? Who do we have to let know? Is there somebody at the state we have to know? Is there somebody with one of our contracts we're working with, the stakeholders? And then developing how you're going to respond to it. Playbooks is what they're often referred to. So you can start to put playbooks together. We'll go a little further into that. And at the end of this, there's a couple links for playbooks you can download. But playbooks are defined procedures how you handle ransomware if that occurs, or if you had hardware failure, or if you had an employee click on a phishing email, or if somebody modified the payment information, right? The routing numbers. So you have different playbooks you can reference depending on the situation you're dealing with, and then you're able to keep your business running. So again, documenting these procedures, essential activities. So the one step you need to do is start to break down the type of incidents you think you could potentially deal with in your business. Again, I see phishing and credential theft often for small businesses. Again, ransomware. I read a statistic last week. I don't know how accurate it is. It said 80% of ransomware is with small businesses. I don't know, but definitely these are some categories you can use. Theft, if you lose a laptop or a phone, how are you going to deal with it? Fraudulent transactions, data loss. Data is a huge business now, selling people's data. So you can start to put these together. Again, at the end of this presentation, there'll be a link where you can get some pre-populated playbooks. CISA has some. There's also, if you do have cyber insurance, sometimes they have playbooks. Incident severity. You also need to categorize. Not everything needs immediate reaction. My wife called me the other day. Someone was trying to access her business account, just repeatedly trying passwords. She has multi-factor authentication set up. Not a big deal. They didn't get in, but it was something that came up, right? We could classify that as low, but you need to be, if you do suffer a cyber incident, you definitely want to take notes, document it, and then identify the severity of it for your business. Keep tracking the status of it. You want to know when that is closed out, what happened with the investigation, because after it's all done and everything's been contained and you're back up and running, you want to go back and make sure you close up those gaps that allowed this incident to occur. Event evidence handling. This is another interesting thing. When I first started into cybersecurity, a lot of people would just pull the plug on the machine, power down, turn it off. That's not what you want to do anymore. You want to disconnect from the network. And if it is a large cyber attack, one of the people you can reach out to is the FBI, ic3.gov. You can go there to report incidents. If it is monetary loss, fraud of that nature, the FBI may want to come and take an image of your device, your laptop, your server, and they would prefer that you do not power off that device because there is evidence on there that will be lost if you power it off. So have a process. Know what you're running. Are you in Google's, little suite, their business suite? That's what my wife uses. I know some people who use AWS or Microsoft. Communication process. Again, communication is critical on resolving an incident quickly, right? You want to get timely and accurate information, but you don't want to put out something that's not true or worry your clients, worry your staff. You need to know who you have to communicate with, whether you have to reach out to a bank. Did you have fraudulent transactions or vendors, your customers, again, regulators? If there's a business area that you're in that's highly regulated, whether it's healthcare, something of that nature. And it helps to have pre-written templates that you can reference to send out a message that's clear and concise, because it is a very stressful thing to go through an incident. Identify primary contacts. So you need to know where your employees are. There's a couple templates in here for a contact list. You want to know, some people don't like to share information, but a personal phone number sometimes if they don't have a business phone, the home address. Also, cyber insurance. If you're IT vendor, you want to have all that in your list of contacts. Third-party contacts. Again, I had list some of those, right? Can you reach out? Do you have a contact, or do you use QuickBooks? Do you have somebody local at the bank you can reach out to? Again, I mentioned law enforcement, the FBI, ic3.gov, and it doesn't need to be anything fancy, just a basic contact roster like this, right? Alternative contact information, what they do, email. Develop that communication plan. If you don't have a way to quickly reach out to your employees, find a way to put in a call chain. There's a couple different tools that are online that you can leverage that are of no cost. But you want to know how you can get out organization-wide communications. And maybe you won't be able to rely on email. I've had instances where the business's email was compromised, so it could not be used. Starting to document that recovery process. What is the most critical? How do we recover from this? Is our product in the cloud? Can we just move over to another cloud incident? Start to document. Part of an incident response plan would also be leveraging a continuum of operations plan or a disaster recovery plan. You want to be able to keep your business up and running. So I talked a little bit about the COOP, the continuum of operations. How do you re-image? Or how do you get new phones for an employee if phones were compromised? And then start to recover from backups. I would recommend, if you if you're not backing up, begin to start to back up your data and then test every quarter or so. Can I recover some of this data to make sure that if something did occur, you can recover from a cyber attack? So you want to review after the incident occurred. You want to have after actions report and start to review what happened and how can I improve. So after that's done, just go back through and see, was I able to get a hold of all the employees I needed to? Was I able to get a hold of my insurance? Was I able to recover gracefully? Did I have any downtime? Was any customer data lost? How could I do that better? Again, just still talking to that lessons learned. What protection strategies worked? How did we keep up and continue to run? This is example of a post-incident, analysis report. Again, you can leverage these. These are very basic. Again, I would not want my incident response plan as a small business to really be over 3-4 pages. I've seen organizations come with a ridiculous amount, like a small book, and there's no way during a crisis or during an actual cyber incident, you're going to be able to go through that, identify the actual data you need. We'll get through this, an improvement plan. The other big thing, publish it, make sure your employees know, make sure you've reached out to any vendors or contractors you use to help run your business. Also, print a copy, store it in a secure location. I had an individual reach out. They did an incident response plan. They thought they were being prepared. They were hit with ransomware. Their incident response plan was encrypted. They were unable to get to it. They did not have a printed copy to reference. So at least annually, I highly recommend you test your incident response plan through cyber tabletops. If you go to CISA.gov, you can search CTEP, CTEP. CISA has over 100 prepackaged cyber tabletops that you can go through. You can take an hour with your employees and you just basically role play. This is what we would do if a cyber incident occurred. And you can definitely identify gaps. That is a huge thing I do. My next week, I'm going to be doing a bunch of tabletops with different organizations. But test your plan. You cannot just create an incident response plan and let that set on the shelf. That's not going to benefit anyone. And it's never going to be perfect, right? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Take one of these templates, start to fill it out, really start to populate those contacts, make sure your employees are aware of this plan, and then do. Sometimes people feel silly doing it, but take an hour, take 2 hours to sit down and go through your incident response plan and use, I would recommend using one of those scenarios that CISA has. If you do have cyber insurance, often this is a service they offer at no cost, that they will go through that and do a tabletop with you. That really helps to identify things you are missing. Again, this is all to that testing. I like people to test annually. I know it's a lot. Most of the people I work with have never done a tabletop of their incident response plan, and we often identify large gaps or scenarios they did not think about. And really the only way to do that is kind of doing a test run live of your incident response plan. Record those results, how it went. A lot of this is documentation. It is not super exciting, but it really, to have these procedures and processes documented in writing will make your life so much easier. I hope none of you have to go through an incident like this. I hope, if you're not using MFA on your accounts, you can, after this call, go and enable it anywhere you can. It's a little bit of a hassle, but it is much less of a hassle than responding to an incident. Continue to improve on your incident management plan, right? Things change in your environment. Maybe you move to a different cloud environment if you're leveraging something, or a different accounting software, or you bring on new vendors, you have staff changes, right? It's a very fluid thing, the way a business operates. You need to reevaluate your incident response plan. You know, I like to tell people quarterly, but realistically, if you can do it annually, run through that, test it, improve it. Conduct that after action review. These are some of the after action items you could go through. Just really list everybody that participated, what their role was, what went well. You don't want to just identify the gaps. You want to identify what you're doing well, train those strengths also, those weaknesses. Again, after action status, if there's things you need to improve on, I really have learned over the years that it needs to be documented, written down, the date it occurred, what action you want to take, and then assigning it to an individual and tracking the status. So I mentioned the Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. This is the NIST document on how to create an incident response plan. That's the SP 861. We'll get you there. Again, back to these templates. I would recommend grabbing one of these templates, beginning to fill it out, and putting that information in. I mentioned playbooks. Again, this is a checklist of required steps for different types of incidents, right? They really provide a step-by-step way to go through the different incidents that you think you'll deal with. And a lot of vendors have playbooks for free that you can download. Here's some from CISA. Again, like Steffi said, she'll provide that PDF that have all these slides. You can go and download these. It's a little bit of how a playbook looks from CISA, right? Talks about the preparation, what you need to do, how it's identified, and then how you contain that threat and move on. NIST, everything I do working for CISA comes from NIST. We use these frameworks so they're repeatable. These are all free and open to the public. Some of them are a little dry, right? But there's, creating the incident response plan, guide to malware incident, prevention and handling. So that's dealing with ransomware. You can get more and more involved, right? It depends on what your business is doing. Again, the resources and the budget you have, but definitely putting together an incident response plan, again, 3 to 4 pages of who your contacts are, who's going to support you, who's going to help you recover, who do you need to report to, is really, really going to benefit you. And I would say 95% of the organizations I work with and small businesses have no incident response plan. And a lot of people think it's not going to happen to them, and then it does. And it's better to be prepared and not need to use this, right? Again, I'm referencing CISA documentation here. A lot of this, I would say, is overkill for a small business. This is definitely targeted more to critical infrastructure, but you can go here and leverage the Cyber Resiliency Review is what CRR stands for. There is so much information and documentation there to help you put an incident response plan together. There are some fantastic books out there. There's one with a yellow cover. Again, I can't recommend anything that's paid, but go out and check out those resources and take one of these templates and sit down and start to fill it out and figure out who you need to help you support yourself when an incident occurs. Because to be honest, CISA works to be preventative, right? Before an incident occurs. FBI, other organizations like that are after an incident occurred. So when an incident is occurring, it's really you fighting for yourself. So you have to be prepared and have those tools. Again, a lot of people I know have started to pick up cyber insurance. I can't tell you to do that, but to them, that made the most business sense. And unfortunately, some of them had to leverage cyber insurance, and I've talked to them about it, and it worked for them. That helped them to recover and keep their business operating. Again, a couple of the people I talked to in Albuquerque, they said it was the cyber insurance was fantastic, not the cyber incident. Another great resource, stopransomware.gov. This is really looking to protect yourself before it occurs. One of the other things you can do that CISA released is called Cybersecurity Performance Goals. It's 38 questions. If you go to CISA.gov, you can download a tool, CSET, CSET, and you can go through and answer these 38 questions, and it will give you guidance on what to implement to protect your business. And another resource you can go to, it might be on one of these slides, Scuba is another product CISA released. Small business computing, I can't remember the exact acronym, but it's Scuba, SCUBA, and that gives you some guidance on if you use Google Suites, like my wife does for her business, gives you some suggestions and way to audit your accounts to make sure they're configured correctly. And again, this is all no cost. So I really want to illustrate, sometimes it seems overkill for a small business to have an incident response plan, but I think it is essential to have a process and a procedure that your employees can follow if you're not there. They know who to contact, who to reach out to. Here's my information. That runs through everything. I wanted to leave enough time for people to ask questions and things of that nature. So that's it.
Great, great, great. Good information, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I
Okay.
can.
Okay. We do have some questions
Okay.
in there, but before we go through the questions, because of our stakeholders, we have to do a survey, and we will have a whole, once you finish the survey, it's going to take about 5 minutes. Then we will get heavily into the Q&A, and we do have some good questions there. So, and right now one of your links isn't working, but we'll get that fixed. Okay, it's on the slide where it had. I'll show it to you in just a bit. Okay, regarding the training survey, please, for our stakeholders, we need to report to them. So please fill out the training survey, and we appreciate it. And then once that's completed, then we will get into the Q&A, and we do have some questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and then we'll work through them. So please finish your survey, and then we will continue with our Q&A. And Andrew, you do not have to fill out your survey.
I did, to be honest.
You just give us all. Okay, so can everybody see the survey?
Yes.
Right now. Are you seeing it, Christopher? I have 0 of 31 participation. So
I am seeing it.
okay, good. So please fill that out so I can keep my job. Andrew can keep his job. We have a couple of hands raised that we'll talk about during our Q&A. Oh,
I got a question about our internal attendees having to fill out the survey. No, our internal attendees don't have to fill out the survey.
but thank you for attending. I do appreciate it. One of our clients is having trouble with the survey. It's in the chat.
I don't think I can, Monica. I'm sorry, but if after I close it, I might be able to reopen it.
And so we have 3 that had trouble with them. How's it going, Christopher? I can't see that. So
It's going.
it looks like it's frozen. It went away. Enter my answer, then poof, it reappeared. Looks like all our questions is not allowing us to
Let me
fill
try
out the
both
survey.
again. And
Oh,
let
I
me
think he was
relaunch.
getting lots of.
I just relaunched.
Okay, it's relaunched. Please, everybody, fill out the. Sorry about the problems with that
It looks
survey.
like they changed it up a little bit.
Oh,
And now I see an option to show correct answers. There are no correct answers on the survey.
oh, oh, there you go. Very good. Andrew has put a link to the corrected policy template um, in the chat because our chat is enabled. So
And let me open up the participants. Can you raise your hand if you're still having problems with the survey? And I hope you have the ability to raise your hand.
go ahead and close it, Christopher. So Andrew, we have a question in the Q&A, and it's from Glenn, and he says, what do you mean by a tabletop?
All
So
right.
this is
Solid.
good. This is a good question, Glenn. Thank you.
It turns out when you do things a lot, you forget not everybody does those day to day, right? So a tabletop is really just role playing. Something occurs, like a fire drill. I'm sure you've probably done a fire drill. That is like what you do with a tabletop. So one thing I do here is an example of a tabletop template that I give to people when I'm describing what is a tabletop. So, and it's really just role playing. You're playing a game. Incident occurred. So for in this scenario, I say that there was basically ransomware. So I'm going to just go through the objectives. The objectives of this is to examine how you share information, how you would escalate if an incident occurred, what action are you going to take? How does your business become aware of maybe threats that would target them? How does your cybersecurity response work? And how well does your instant response plan work when you suffer, a compromise or somebody steals data? Let me click on this. So really, tabletop is just kind of role playing. So what I do, CISA again has over 100 of these packaged up in a PDF and a Word document that you can go in and customize to your business. And here is the scenario I do in a tabletop. So what I do is,
Andrew, are you sharing something on your screen that we cannot
yeah,
see?
apparently it is not sharing. Is it not
It's
displaying?
display settings. Change your display setting.
Oh, again. See, I was honest. Thank you guys for.
So
All right. Sorry. Now
okay.
you saw my
Okay.
hands moving and nothing. I apologize. So this is an exercise we do. I come into an organization or a business and we get everybody in a room. If you have legal, if you have a public information officer, just the employees, or if you have IT vendors, we all get in a room. And this is really what we're trying to suss out of this scenario. And here's the scenario I have. A threat actor compromises a third-party vendor, somebody you're working with. They send an email to you that appears to be legitimate. Like, oh, hey, I work with this vendor. They want me to change this routing number. Like this happened in Santa Fe, May. I think Santa Fe lost $345,000 when they changed a routing number for a contractor. And then a couple months later, the contractor, hey, why haven't you paid me? So putting a scenario like that, we would come into a room, it's all role playing, and we go through the incident response plan to see how well it works, to this incident. So that is a tabletop. Glenn, did that answer? Is there any other questions?
Yes, there's another question. Can you use AI to test the strength of your own cybersecurity?
No, I would say you could use AI to help you create an incident response plan. Not so much to test your cybersecurity. That would be through a penetration test or potentially an audit. Those are expensive. CISA does provide penetration tests, remote vulnerability assessments to assess security posture, but that is a limited resource, and often that is going to only go to those critical resources, energy companies, water. It'd be very difficult for AI to test your security of your business.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We have another question. As far as meeting government agency standards, do you have a recommended small business template? Is the NIST SP 861 sufficient or overkill?
Overkill. 100%, I would say overkill. I would go to CISA.gov's small business page. There's a toolkit. I'm not going to look for a link right at the moment, but I will get that to Steffi. If you go to CISA.gov, if you search small business, there's a whole section dedicated to it with resources. CISA often works with NSA, FBI, and Australia Signals. I can't remember, but it's an Australian government agency. I've also found that they have excellent recommendations for small business. All of these are no cost. The NIST is a great framework. Definitely overkill. Another great thing I would highly recommend is it's called CSET, CSET, Cybersecurity Evaluation Tool. You can go to CISA.gov and download it for free. And you just install the application, and then there's assessments you can do. Cybersecurity Performance Goals, CPG. Go through that. There's 38 questions it'll ask you, and you can answer. And there's guidance in that program on really what that question is trying to ask. CISA also offers training on that tool through, if you go to the website, search for CISA or CSET, there's a 3-hour class you can take if you're so inclined on how to do those assessments yourself. This is something I do with critical infrastructure. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do it with small businesses, but all these tools are available at no cost. You can go and get them off of CISA.gov. Those would be my recommendations. NIST is fantastic. If I were to tell my mom or my sister or my wife, hey, here's the NIST 800-60, there would be some choice words given to me. So overkill for a small business most of the time.
We have Alethea McInerney online, and she works with Apex, and she does the CMMC certification training for small businesses. So if you're going to work with the government as a contractor, you will need to be able to complete the CMMC. So Alethea, we have unmuted you, so you are able to talk if you want to promote your services.
Yes, I just had a training right before this one on CMMC, and I go through all the compliance regulations on what is required and what is needed, as well as provide tools that are available. And CISA is definitely on my list of tools that are available. So I have not forgotten you by any means. So I appreciate this presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alethea.
Yeah, and that's challenging, right? So I'm under Department of Homeland Security, but DOE, DOD, but really a lot of the labs and contractors, they're starting to want that CMMC level 1 or potentially level 2. And it is challenging as a small business. As we just said, the NIST has great framework. but it's challenging for a large organization to implement. I have a colleague, Felix Vallea, who's in Las Cruces area. He was the CISO for the city of El Paso. I think it took him almost 4 years to start to implement fully the NIST framework. And that was with dedicated staff, right? El Paso, pretty large city. So
we have had cybersecurity classes regarding the NIST. And so if you go to our New Mexico Small Business YouTube channel, any of my cybersecurity classes that I presented talk about the NIST, the different frameworks, okay, for data privacy and for devices.
Yeah, there is so much there. Like Steffi just mentioned, there's data privacy, dealing with malware, storing evidence, incident response plan, and it's overwhelming to be honest. There's a lot to it, and that's where, like Steffi said, if you can go to that YouTube channel and watch those videos that have condensed it down, I'd highly recommend.
And that also, this presentation will be put on that SBDC YouTube channel. So we have another question in the Q&A. It says, can you say more about what SCUBA, SCUBA, actually does if you use their tools?
Yes. So let me get out of here. SCUBA, I'm going to look it up quick and tell you what the actual acronym is. It is a set of scripts. So you need to be somewhat computer savvy, I would say. You're running a script against your environment, whether that's Google Business Suites, secure cloud business application project. So there's a set of baselines. Right now, I don't know if there's anywhere standardized what kind of settings and security implementation you should have in your Google Workspace, whether you're using Google Docs or in your Microsoft, if you're using O365 to support your email and your business. I know a lot of small businesses leveraging cloud. So these are scripts you can run to look at your SharePoint, your OneDrive, your email, or if you're in Google Workspace, it'll look at your Gmail settings, your Google Meet site, your drives and documents, and it will give you a report back of suggested changes you should make to secure your environment. Supposedly they're working on Amazon to release that, but really it's a set of guidance and secure baselines that you should implement in your cloud environments. It started in, I think, the end of 2022, that they realized as people move to the cloud, they need some assistance on making sure they're set up securely. One thing CISA they're trying to push is secure by design, where the onus is on the creators of these products to be secure, and it shouldn't be on us to have to go in and configure everything. But right now we do. So CISA is looking to help people do that, especially small businesses. And SCUBA it audits your Google or your Microsoft environment right now, and then gives you kind of a scorecard and recommendations on things you could change to be more secure. And I do have individuals that run that twice a year just to check in and see what their settings are. That is what SCUBA is.
We had another question in the Q&A, and it was, what is NIST? So NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It is a government agency. So the website is nist.gov, and they have standards for all technology.
Yeah.
So that's a really good website, but you can look for cybersecurity on it, and then it'll talk about
all different ways to implement it, frameworks to use.
Frameworks.
NIST really is. They wanted to put out a standardized procedure and framework the way everybody could implement it, right? And it's repeatable, and they know that it's secure. So that is their whole objective.
The next question is, can we get the slideshow later on? And you will get a PDF file of the slideshow. And after we close out this presentation, I will send out the link to this webinar on our YouTube channel, and then also we will send out the PDF file of the presentation. So you will receive that for participating with us. So thank you. Okay. Today we've had a presentation by Andrew Buschbom from CISA, a very good resource for your cybersecurity. I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank you for participating, all the questions. I think we had a lot of good questions in the Q&A, and you can always contact me or Andrew if you need any assistance as we move forward. And I hope this information makes you feel safe as you move forward with your plan. It is your responsibility, so it's good. And hopefully we have all the resources that you will need. So again, I'll let you guys go, and thank you for participating.
Thank you all.